So this is where we are today on blendedonlinelearning.com under site administration, and if we look at the blue menu, we're under the grades tab, and this is the list of sub-tabs that we're going to be taking a look at. Divided into two main categories, grades and report settings. So we're setting up our grading system fundamentally. Let's head for the first one, general settings. Has to be said, there is in each one of these, and most of them, there are a lot of options, some of which would be useful only in certain settings. If I'm thinking a university or something like that, where perhaps the institution itself has demands or requirements which work out as quite complex customizations. In a lot of other settings, in a lot of other institutional settings, maybe less formal, less structured, a lot of these options will be superfluous. You will be staying with the default settings. So it goes down from graded roles. The default is student, that's who you're grading, who appears on the grade book. You have the option of customizing the report. The default one is the user report. The aggregation position, where the grand totals are displayed first or last in the gradebook reports. Last is the most obvious position for it. The default for including the scales is yes, but that can be customized, but then it will, in fact, this issues a warning. If you tamper with this, it will recalculate all the aggregated grades. So be careful with that one. Including dates for submission and hidden grades. Let's see, that one is if user cannot see hidden grades, show date of submission instead. So some grades in some systems might be hidden, so you have the option of at least showing the date this hidden grade was submitted, not the grade itself, but the date. Enable publishing. So that would be you exporting grades outside of Moodle. Why would you do that? If you're using an LMS that wasn't Moodle, why would you be working in Moodle then using it? Can't imagine the circumstances that you would need that, but it is an option. Including feedback in the export, that is if you export it outside of Moodle. The export display type, again, all this is I think exporting externally out of Moodle. Would that be just if you wanted a document? I guess it might be. The real grade type is the default one, but of course some institutional systems will work with letter grades or percentage grades, so you have the option to change your system. You're able also to set the number of decimal places that will appear. You can also customize the profile fields. The default is first name, last name, ID number, institution, department, then email, which seems pretty usable for all the situations I can think of, but you might want to customize that too. Default is a grade, export, custom. This is if you want to add custom fields to the profile. The recover old grades default. So if a student or user re-enrolls in the course, the system would regenerate their old grades, and the default for that one would be no. Here you have options of how you export these grade sheets as your primary method. Now it says here the default is none, and it's actually, again, it's kind of warning us. If you tamper with that, it might make exported records being identified as new or updated. It sounds like that was a bit of a risky one. I think we're just going to stick with the default for that one. I guess the logic behind tampering with the default settings, which have been calculated to be the most logical, most common, most useful, least risky ones. But I guess in some institutional settings, the institutional requirements might be such that the most obvious, most logical, most common, least risky ones are not what is wanted. So you are actually forced to tamper with things. But it sounds like you're getting into quite dangerous territory there. Where are we here? Unlimited grades. So this would be when you're setting minimum maximum values. If you enable this setting, these limits would be removed, and it allows grades of over 100% to be entered directly in the grade book. That's a risky one. When I was coordinating, I had somebody submit a whole bunch of grades which were well over 100%, but this was because this teacher had calculated the grades incorrectly. So I don't know if you would want to do that. Can't think of the circumstances you'd want to do that. You get to see the minimum grade default, yes. The maximums are set to hundreds here for the maximum for default. And we're leaving that. They are... So minimums and maximums are kept in the calculation. That's fine. So the default report, I think this would be the overview report. But you have the option of exporting everything to a whole different site, I guess. I can't imagine doing that. Why would you want to do that? Here, if you've decided to do that, another LMS, I guess. You get to put it in here, but the default, not surprisingly, is empty. Let's go back and look at the grade category settings. Okay, so natural aggregation would be when it's just the sum of all the grades automatically weighted. I don't know if you go for one of the other options, the mean, the median, the lowest, then you might have to intervene manually, as it were, to readjust the weighting. Again, I guess in certain circumstances you might be required to do this, but I suspect you would want to avoid doing this, because if you're intervening manually to reweight the grading system, you're generating a lot of work for yourself, and you're opening up the possibility of making mistakes, which system-wide could be quite catastrophic. Available aggregation types, these are all the ones that you get, and as we already saw here, the default is natural. However, I think, so it says here, hold down the control key to select multiple items. So you would get the option of adding as potential types more than just natural. And I think that might allow you to offer different systems to different departments. But then you would have to intervene on each individual department because you've got different systems going on. Oh, that's scary. Excluding empty grades, yes. This is because if you don't exclude them, the user who didn't submit some piece of work would be given a 0. And that would be included in the calculation of their overall grade, whereas the default is suggesting that it's omitted completely, I guess giving the student the chance to catch up. I don't know if the course has an absolute deadline, a closing date, then you would want to override this and go for no. They would be calculated. I mean, I've worked in systems where if the work has not been handed in by a certain date, you're given a 0. So there, I would go for a no. But we're not talking about individual departments or courses here. We're talking about the whole system. So you'd have to be really careful about this. You'd have to perhaps leave it as yes as the default for the whole entire system, and then department by department or course by course intervene and change it, depending on the system that they're using, on their policy. Include outcomes in aggregation. This is if you set up learning outcomes and attribute and you create a system for measuring the outcomes outside of quizzes and tests and exams. It might be the teacher decide, or the student even self-evaluating how well how close they've come to satisfying an outcome. So the outcomes very often are expressed verbally not very often, they're usually expressed verbally in a way such as the user by the end of the course will be able to complete, or recognise, acknowledge, or back to Bloom's taxonomy. So you've maybe worked in a system by which the user themselves or the teacher decides how close they've come to achieving these outcomes, and you're attributing some kind of scoring system, and that is included in the gradebook. However, by default, that's a no. That's a no, because it would completely alter quiz, exam, midterm, test results. Keep the highest grade. Keep the highest grade. No. Would you do that? I guess in the case of resits, you might want to, but not as a mechanism in the whole system. Drop the lowest. There might be some institutions which allow students to lose their worst score, I guess, but default no. And allow, this is an important one, are allowed to be manually overridden. So the users we don't mean students here, we would mean course teachers, I guess. And so the logic behind this would be you're setting up an overall system, however, and not by coincidence, the default is yes, it would allow individual teachers to go in and override category grades if they want to customize, if they've got a particular grading system in place for their course, which is different from the whole institution system. So you're allowing teacher users or coordinators to intervene And you're allowing them a degree of autonomy, and that seems the right thing to do. Where are we? Grade item setting. This is a little one. It's nice and short. It's how grades are displayed in the reports. So this is not something you would choose on a whim. It would be connected to your institutional system. So some systems are by letter, some are by percentage. The default is real, actual grades, actual scale values, and it gives you the option of deciding the number of decimal places. That was fairly straightforward. Scales. So the scales, this particular tab would allow for the generation of completely customized scales. You would go in here, I guess. Oh, no, you wouldn't. You would add a new scale. Let's just quickly look what that looks like. You get to give a name. You get to specify, well, help with the scale. I would desperately need that. So, for example, they're saying values like disappointing, not good enough, average. So, okay, this is something highly customized. You get to give a description here. You would save your changes, and so that would be, you would add that as one of this, as a set of scales that would be available to you, if that's what rings your bell. Letters, that's an easy one. You're attributing numerical values from highest to lowest to the letter grades. These are F to 0. I assume these have been generated based on national, international averages of what letter grades usually correspond to, but this edit button would allow you to change that just in case your institutional system had a difference. Say your A plus was from 95% to 100%. So that's fine. Now we're on to report settings. So the actual report that's generated, again, and this is quite a long one. There are a whole bunch of, you can see it's default, but you get the option of doing things like including non-active enrollments, to do what's quick grading. If enabled, when editing is turned on, a text appears there, allowing many grades to be edited at the same time. Oh, really? Okay, that sounds dangerous. What does it mean? Does it mean maybe on the same page? I'm not entirely sure about that one. Show column averages, show ranges. They're saying no, but you could include the range for each category so the user can realize and can understand better, how well they did or how badly they did. Using profile images, the default is yes. The number of grades. This one is all fairly straightforward. Column averages, display type, inherit. Determines whether the average is displayed as real grades, percentages, or whether the display type, the category is used. Inherit. Let's just see what the other options are. Inherit. So I guess that's displaying as calculated, sort of displaying in the report as you set up as a method of grade calculation. I think that's what that means. Same thing with range display type. So you're not if you've set up your grade system in a certain way, then the user report will reflect that. I think that's what this is. And here you've got the option to save changes if you've altered things, but I'm not going to. Grade history. So the number of entries per page. They will have calculated, they're suggesting 50 as the default. There's probably a logical reason for that. It must mean that 50 entries allow for good visualization. If you do more, possibly you risk overcrowding your page. So we're going to leave that one. The overview report. So it's two items here. Showing rank. Oh my God, that's so cruel. You're showing the position of the student in the report in comparison to everybody else. In educational theory a long time ago, that kind of thing was done. You were expected to. I'm talking about when I was at school. Yes, they didn't. Not in sort of final official certificates, but how you were doing in comparison to the other members of your class in little class tests and even in homework. That was done. That was the done thing, and it's quite humiliating. Just quick an aside, my maths teacher used to hand out every piece of homework in order, so that you were really well aware of where you placed in comparison to your classmates. And I, dear listener, was always last because I would put in a high-level maths class because I was quite good in other subjects, but not in maths. So I was put in a high-level maths class with fellow classmates who were way better than me, who were really good at maths. And my homework was always handed out last. That was a really depressing experience. So, yeah, I don't know, unless you're a sadist, I don't know why you'd want to do that. And hide totals if they contain hidden items. So what are these hidden items? So by default, they're hidden. These are non-official. I can't. My imagination must be running dry. I can't even think what sort of hidden items you would have. I'm not sure. But anyway, maybe some of you are looking at this and thinking, yeah, that's really useful for me. I can't think why I would need that. What am I on? I've forgotten where I am. I think it's the user report, yeah? And the user report has got a lot of bits and bobs, but you'll see most of the default ones are checked. We're back to the showing the rank in comparison to everybody else, and the default is no. Showing letter grades, the default is no. Decimal places, the default is 0. These just seem to be hide totals if they contain hidden items. I'm going to have to clear up this mystery about what these hidden items might be. I just can't think why you'd be hiding items, but there must be a reason for that. Show contribution to course total. Yeah, if you're waiting, you would want to see, that makes sense. Say you've got class quizzes, you've got a midterm exam, you've got a project, and you've got a final exam. All of these items are weighted. And you would, I guess, your user would want to know how they got to the final total. You would want the breakdown of all those items. For me, the only mysterious one is the hidden items. I'm going to look forward to some other videos of you guys who some of you might have figured out or can give an example of what that might be. I don't know. I can't think. So that is a long one. Sorry, but there are lots of items under grades. So it's an important one. See you next time.